About 50 years ago, an astronaut returning from the moon experienced things that he couldn't find a scientific explanation for. So, with some colleagues, he launched a new science focused on the mind and how it works in the body and across space and time. It's the field of Noetics, where the tools of modern science are used to help us understand how what we think and feel affects us and the world around us. Now, this is Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments from the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon.
This is Noetic Moments, where we explore the field of research that discovers what consciousness is, what it does, how it works, and how our lives could be very different if we understood it better. I'm Ruth Miller, a longtime student of consciousness, along with cybernetics and anthropology, and through this series of programs, I'm introducing some of the people whose work has defined this field of research, and I'm explaining some of their ideas and experiments. I'll also explore some relevant news items and answer questions that you send to my email address, ruth@noeticmoments.org. And Noetic is spelled Noetic. Today is a very special day. Today is episode number 42 in this series of programs. And for those of us with geeky families, or if you happen to have read or heard or seen The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the number 42 has a special meaning indeed. You see, in that story, there was this gigantic planet-sized computer, and the beings who built it asked it the most important question they could ask, and it worked for millennia, and then one day popped up with the answer. The question, what's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? And the answer? Some of you already hear it. Yes, indeed, 42. So today we're shifting gears, and instead of the usual several minutes of walking you through what our past shows have told us about consciousness and noetic research, we're going to give you a summary of what they said. It's really perfect, you know, because we have been asking what scientists call the hard question. And the hard question is, what's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? Or at least, how does mind generate our experience of life, the universe, and everything? And the answer? Well, yes, indeed. Today's show, we will be answering it in show number 42. All right. So what do we do now? After 10 months of exploring the research of scientists trying to understand what consciousness is and what it does, well, we learned very early on that most of what goes on in the mind is not in our conscious awareness at all, regardless of the fact that we're taught that consciousness is being aware. But in fact, most of what goes on in our mind goes on in unconscious processes. So a way to think about the mind is it has three parts. What we're aware of, our personal awareness, what medical folks and psychologists call our consciousness, but then what we aren't aware of that's keeping our bodies going, which also includes fears and beliefs about potential dangers as part of keeping it going. And we can call that the individual subconscious. And then what we aren't aware of that guides us in our actions, that pulls us into becoming something more than we have been, which we can call the individual superconscious. Now, this isn't Freud's superconscious as getting on you when you've done something wrong. No. This is the superconscious that is aware of far more than anything the body can perceive or actually even do. So if we look at the world from that perspective, we can say that while we can say where in the brain processes that direct the body show up, the responses in our body to both our individual mental activity and actually the mental activity around us happens far faster than nerve impulses or chemicals can travel through the body. So clearly they aren't all originating in the brain. The result is it turns out that many of the scientists doing this research have come to accept that what we call mind is not the product of the electrochemical activity of the brain, but is in fact the activity of a kind of field that surrounds and permeates the body. Now, a field is energy. It can be a plasma field. It can be something else. This is not an electrical field. This is not a magnetic field. This is not like the iron filings lining up around a magnet. But there are many of the same qualities in this field we call mind. And what it means is that the brain acts as a receiver-transmitter, officially a transponder, receiving messages from the mind and transmitting them to the body, and receiving messages from the senses and transmitting them to the body and to the mind. More, we've seen that the brain actually changes the input from the fingers or the eyes or the nose to fit previous patterns already established in the brain. We are, in fact, hallucinating, literally hallucinating the world around us based on our past experiences and what patterns exist in the neuronal connections in the brain. And it's these modified inputs that go to the subconscious mind that manages the body. And if the inputs to the subconscious mind that manages the body are inaccurate or are based on information that is harmful for the body, guess what? The body turns out to have problems. Now, experiments have shown that what we call the individual mind must be this field and not the brain. Many experiments have shown that, but my favorite ones, and we looked at a while back, are the ones that show that even if the brain and the heart have flatlined and the person is declared dead, mental function continues for as long as several hours afterwards before the brain and the heart are restored. This is amazing, but what a great evidence that who and what we are, our individual awareness and our mental processes continue whether or not they are running the body. Okay, so mind then is a field. It's a pattern of informed energy that exists prior to and after the body is functioning, primarily as the superconscious and partly as personal awareness. It develops with the body and brain as the subconscious mind, and the personal awareness is constantly being told by the brain what the world out there is like, even though the brain is not giving it direct information. All very fascinating. Now, a field, whether it be a plasma field or a magnetic field or an electrical field, has a unique pattern of vibration that makes it different from other fields. And some experiments have demonstrated that people and animals who have minds that are vibrating along the same patterns are able to sense when the other of those minds that are on the same pattern is focusing attention on them. Or, for example, with animals, is about to come home. These experiments help us to know that the mind field that we are is by no means limited to the body and to our immediate personal awareness. And what's even more interesting is the basic building blocks of the universe show up as energy or matter depending on whether a mind is present to observe them, as is demonstrated in the famous double-slit experiments in quantum physics. So our mind not only shapes our perceptions of the world around us and the way the body responds to that world, it helps determine what forms show up in the world around us. As the fundamental building blocks, the subatomic units that make up that quantum field that is everywhere present throughout the universe, take different forms depending on what consciousness is observing them. Now, all of this helps us to understand how bodies and environments can shift and change as people change their thought processes, what they're focusing on in the personal awareness part of their consciousness. As the personal awareness shifts, both the subconscious and the body that is responding to and guided by the subconscious are shifting. And it helps us to understand what's called the placebo effect, how the belief of a care provider in a treatment can help a patient receiving that treatment experience healing. They are entangled, if you want to use that term, a quantum term, in their concern about and their focus on the healing process. The belief that it is going to work matches the hope that it might work, and the two bring about the fact and the experience of it working. Now, based on all of that, a growing number of scientists are seeing our individual field of mind as part of a larger field, a human noosphere, or a global brain, what Jung called the collective consciousness. And more scientists are equating that larger field with the quantum field, the zero-point field out of which all matter and energy arise in this orderly system we call the universe. And we can see this when we realize that the shared field of mind of humanity affects the behavior of computer networks around the world, and by extension, all electrical and electronic systems everywhere, in our bodies, in our power grids, and in the natural world we are part of. So our personal experience must be understood as the product of our mental and emotional processes, which happen in a field that surrounds and permeates our bodies and is part of a much larger field that surrounds and permeates all that is, and which are transmitted to smaller fields in the body directly, the field of the heart, the field of the spleen, etc., and through the brain to various muscles and nerves, where they're turned into nerve signals or thoughts and words and hormones that affect the body's state and activity. Our personal experience comes first from our mental and emotional processes, which are transmitted into the body and which then create experiences that our senses send back into the mental state. We've got a marvelous positive feedback loop there, which can be upsetting because if you've been thinking negatively and you're sending negative signals into the body, then the body sends you negative feedback back, which reinforces the mental negativity. Not fun. However, the reverse applies as well, as we will see more as we go forward. So we've got a really good start on the answer to the question of the day. Number 42 is the answer. Life, the universe, and everything we experience is a function of our mental state. We perceive what our mind tells us to perceive. We change the body based on what the mind says is needed in the moment. And we participate in a larger shared mind that affects everything electrical and electronic around us, including natural processes. Wow. Well, as with all research, every time you get an answer, it brings up a whole new set of questions like, well, where did that mind, that universal mind, that field come from? And what does it make? Why does it make bodies and other things in the universe? And truly, the next most important question, what difference does any of this make in my life? Which is where we're going to be going over the next few shows. You can catch up on our past shows on the KXCR.net archives. You want to click on the little cloud up on the banner at the top of the screen. And on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where you will find links to the clips and books and authors that I mention, as well as a form that you can use to reach out to me and get answers to any questions you have. All right, so if my mind is part of a universal mind, then what happens when I think? And how does that work? I'm going to let this YouTube explain that for you.
Science has recently discovered that its principles and hypotheses have now become metaphysical laws. Science is exploring what metaphysics has known for thousands of years through the research in the sphere of quantum physics that everything is linked to each other. All individuals exist individually, but they are also an essential component of total universal consciousness, like a drop of salt water from the vast sea. It is because humans are part of this universal consciousness with their vibrational signatures that are so special to each of them. This law of vibration is part of the broader picture as well. Through this superconsciousness, what people send out as ideas, feelings, emotions that are embodied in human life. The bigger picture is the law of attraction. It's a major communicator. Applying the vibrational patterned signatures, people send their consciousness out, and the universal consciousness responds to it by returning the reality. Nice or indecent, what one offers, he gets it back rightfully. The law doesn't judge right or wrong. However, people do, based on whatever vibrational frequency they commit themselves.
So what we're seeing or hearing is the blending of research science with the form of scientific philosophy that's been called applied metaphysics, through which researchers, attempting to use the scientific method as carefully as possible, have identified several consistent principles, often called laws. One of these is the law of vibration, which you just heard about, and another is the law of attraction, which is where he was going. Here's one introduction by that same voice into how those work.
Many tools clarify what research in quantum physics has found about the cause and effect of a genuine intent. To make all of this work, one does not have to be a quantum physicist or a spiritual teacher. Identifying that the universal consciousness will work for all, it's enough to start with a determination to let go of old illustrations about self and deceptive relationship with the world. The law of attraction states that like objects attract similar things, and the universe will represent what people use to think if they believe something with enough zeal, strength, and emotion. Vibrations are feelings. Individuals send these vibrations into the universe as they think about something, and the universe reacts. Being in a positive state of mind will cause human thoughts to vibrate at a higher frequency. Doubts decrease the frequency of the vibrations of individual thinking, indicating that the world will also respond moderately. Any process of thinking, those individuals who stay positive are in a strong, high vibrational mode. When they are in a strong or positive vibration zone, good things are always going to happen, creating positive things or vibes. Therefore, one needs to vibrate. Wealth, health, abundance, performance, all these have specific frequencies. One must control the vibration that stirs the thought process. So people should remember to use the law of vibration when they follow the law of attraction. Both of these go hand in hand.
So, recognizing that what I'm perceiving is a function of what I have been focused on in the past, and that my mind is constantly affecting the universal field around me, I need to be very careful about what I'm thinking and feeling if I want to experience the kind of life we all long for. And this ultimately is the answer. The life, the universe, and everything I experience exists because of what I have been thinking and feeling. Next week, we'll explore more of what that means for our individual and collective future. Now I'd like to shift to a book written by one of those early metaphysical scientists, a man named Thomas Troward, who was a magistrate in India. I've referred to some of his work in the past. This book is called The Creative Process in the Individual. It's his original language I'm going to share with you. But if you would like my interpretation of it, it's The Creative Power of Thought, edited by Ruth L Miller, Thomas Troward's Metaphysics. Thomas Troward's original language says, "What we are looking for is something personal, and it is to be obtained by producing conditions which do not yet exist. In other words, it is nothing less than the exercise of a creative power in the sphere of our own particular world. What we want is to introduce our own personal factor into the realm of unseen causes. This is a big thing. And if it is possible at all, it must be by some sequence of cause and effect. And this sequence, it is our object to discover. The law of cause and effect is one we can never get away from. But by carefully following it up, we may find that it will lead us further than we had anticipated. This is all from the very early part of the book. What we are seeking, therefore, is to discover how to arrange things in such an order as to set in motion a train of causation that will harmonize our own condition without antagonizing the exercise of a like power by others. This therefore means that all individual exercise of this power is the particular application of a universal power which itself operates creatively on its own account, independent of the individual. He calls it the universal creative principle. He says such a universal creative principle is at work. We can see immediately from the existence of the world around us with all its inhabitants and the interrelation of all the parts of the cosmic system, showing us its underlying unity. Our first glance, therefore, shows us that the all-originating power must be, in essence, unity. So that's some of the material that Thomas Troward shares in the creative process in the individual. And I'm bringing it up because in earlier books, Thomas Troward was the one who first laid out the law of attraction and the law of vibration. And in this book, he is actually saying that what many of us have called God in the past can be understood as the creative process, and it is working in us. So it is a guide. If you just tuned in, you are listening to Noetic Moments on KXCR, 90.7 on the FM dial, and streaming on KXCR.net. And that sound tells me we need to look at what's going on in the world today and what you, the listeners, are curious about. I'm drawing today's story from Google News, and it just came out in a number of journals. This is coming from a website, phys.org, and the link will be on our site. And it is a study to find out and demonstrates that bumblebees like to play. What they did, they followed 45 bumblebees in an arena. They gave them the options of walking through an unobstructed path to reach a feeding area, or deviating from this path into the areas with wooden balls. And the balls are just about the same length as a bumblebee is long. So they're more like beads, right? These individual bees rolled these balls between 1 and 117 times when they were on their way to get their food, suggesting that they found rolling the balls somewhat rewarding. Another experiment, 42 bees were given access to 2 colored chambers, one always containing movable balls and one without any objects. And when tested and given a choice, neither containing balls, bees showed a preference for the color of the chamber previously associated with the wooden balls. This is kind of fun. The experiment was set up in a way to remove any notion that the bees were moving the balls for any greater purpose than play. Rolling balls did not contribute to any survival strategy, gaining food, clearing clutter, or mating, and was done under stress-free conditions. I love it. Bumblebees like to play. Fascinating. And it turns out that the younger the bee, the more they played. The older bee wasn't so interested. So if you want to be sure that playing is a good thing, there you go. Even bumblebees play. All right. Well, that's it for today's show. The next time we get together, we'll look at more of the research that's being done in an attempt to understand what consciousness is, what it really does, and how we can experience life differently when we use our consciousness fully. We are out of time for today, but remember, you can continue the exploration on our website, www.noeticmoments.org. where there is a listing of all our past shows, along with the titles and other resources that we refer to on the show, and where you can send me your comments and questions, which I'll do my best to get answered the next time we're on the air. For now, thanks for joining me here on Noetic Moments at KXCR Community Radio, 90.7 FM in Florence, Oregon, and have a wonderful week.
You've been listening to Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments. This program is produced in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in beautiful Florence, Oregon, supported by you, our listeners. Our theme music is Tumbling Planets, composed and performed by Jeff Lovejoy. To hear this program again or learn more about Noetic Sciences, search our website, www.noeticmoments.org.